If someone asked the question whether Kratos of the past was a hero, I believe a simple answer wouldn't be sufficient. Anti-hero would be a more appropriate title, although some would go as far as to call him a villain. Definition: a central character in a story, film, or drama who lacks conventional heroic attributes, but this still doesn't quite fit Kratos. He did have some conventional heroic traits, such as the love he had for his wife and child, the care for Pandora, who was like another daughter, or the respect and admiration for his Spartan soldiers. However, now I'd be hesitant to call Kratos even an anti-hero, let alone a villain. So why the change? Well, apart from Sony Santa Monica rebooting the series, Kratos now has multiple motives, beyond just raising his son. Before we start, I'd greatly appreciate it if we can hit 100 likes on this video, and if you'd like to stick around for future videos, subscribing would bring me closer to reaching 8k. With that said, let's begin. Kratos was born in Sparta, Greece. Life was unforgiving in the city-state, but those that didn't embrace it perished. Eventually, Kratos became an admired Spartan general, leading an army of Spartans who were notorious. However, on one fateful day, his Spartan army were losing to the barbarians, and so to ensure victory he called upon the god of war then, Ares, to aid him, in exchange for his servitude. This accursed day would forever change his life. He'd set himself on a path becoming infamously known as the Ghost of Sparta, who destroyed an entire pantheon, a name that would eventually echo into the Nine Realms. Past Kratos was blinded by his rage, fueled by the manipulative murder of his wife and child. Originally, he wanted to kill Ares, who was directly responsible. However, soon after becoming the new god of war, he faced betrayal from his father Zeus. From there, a new motive was born: to kill his father. Any god that stood in his way was a roadblock, as they all served Zeus. Zeus's betrayal was a result of fear after learning of the marked warrior prophecy. The prophecy stated a mortal with a distinct mark would bring the twilight of the gods, and therefore Zeus's demise. Zeus was Olympus. If he fell, the pantheon would too. Interestingly, this fear wasn't exclusive to Zeus. This brings us to the history of patricide and parricide in the series. Kronos, the grandfather of Kratos and father of Zeus, had the same fear as Zeus, that his son would overthrow him. As a result, he set out to eat Zeus, only for Rhea, his wife, to switch Zeus for a stone. This same fear enveloped Zeus, who imprisoned Kronos to wander the desert of lost souls. Naturally, Kratos suffered from the same fate, which ultimately brought about the demise of both his father and grandfather. However, the distinction is Kratos wasn't motivated by fear, rather his lust for revenge. Remarkably, the theme of patricide and parricide are also present in the Nine Realms. At the dawn of creation, Ymir was the first being created when Niflheim and Muspelheim came in contact. Soon, Odin and his brothers would descend from him, and eventually kill him, creating Midgard. In 2018, Baldur wanted to exact his revenge by killing his mother Freya, similar to Kratos of the past, or when Thor ruthlessly wounded his son Modi after the death of Magni. Even in Ragnarok we experience this through Odin's imprisonment of his son Tyr, and of course the slaying of his son Thor. However, where all others failed to fight this instinct, Kratos' son Atreus finally ended the cycle, although not without trouble. We saw a glimpse of Atreus prematurely fighting his nature when he turned on Kratos. The argument could be made Kratos also overcame this, though not without failing countless times. This brings us to who Kratos has now become. After the events of God of War 3, Kratos sailed from Greece to Egypt. During his journey, he desperately tried to rid himself of the Blades of Chaos, as they symbolized the monster he had become, and more significantly, a reminder of the death of his family. Eventually, he would accept this curse. Soon after, he would travel to Midgard and settle in the Wildwoods, swearing to live as an ordinary man free from bloodshed. There he would master his biggest weakness, his rage. He would soon meet Faye, who would teach him to love again, and that who he was is not who he needs to remain. However, his biggest motive for change wouldn't arrive until Atreus was born. With the death of Faye, Kratos was forced into a difficult situation of raising his son, while still recovering from his past life. He was forced to abandon his ordinary life and yet again revisit the horrors of the past for the sake of his son, a rather beautiful representation of a parent's love. He was distraught that, statistically speaking, Atreus would fall victim to his nature, just like his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. While interpretive, you could argue Atreus' split ancestry of God and Jotun will continue to clash. His godhood symbolizes untamed destruction, while his Jotunhood symbolizes the longing to be virtuous and serve others, like Faye. Though Kratos wasn't the only teacher. In fact, I would argue apart from teaching Atreus how to survive, Kratos learned a more valuable lesson from his son. Contrast the two quotes as an example. Close your heart to their suffering in 2018 to open your heart to their suffering in Ragnarok. If it weren't for Atreus, Kratos wouldn't have found his compassion for others. Moreover, Kratos wouldn't have become the future revered god as hinted in the final mural. He's now found his new motive as the Rebuilder, a title confirmed in John Ford's video by Matt Sofas, the narrative director for Ragnarok. As the title hints, Kratos has rebuilt the Norse lands by saving the realms and freeing them from Odin's reign, forging alliances, and acting as a leader of hope for the people. It's not far-fetched to assume this is also establishing his role in pantheons beyond. After all, it was hinted in the Fallen God comic Egypt was somewhat in disarray, and Kratos fulfilled his purpose there by taking down a large threat. This could be interpreted as his purpose being born as early as that. Another motive for change was the Norns, the goddesses of fate in the Norse lands. While they only appeared once, they played a defining role. After learning there is no fate and only predictability of action, Kratos is forced to contemplate how he'll carry himself. Not only that, but Freya is also challenged. Without this insight, Kratos would have died to Thor and Atreus would become a disciple of Odin as depicted in the mural. However, just because Kratos has now become an admired god, it wasn't achieved without bloodshed, even in this new life. This brings me to my next point. Kratos can be considered unconventionally divine. Where the stereotypical deity brings salvation through righteousness and selflessness, Kratos is the complete inverse. Many had to perish before ridding the lands of Odin. But the difference this time is justification. As Kratos admits in 2018, he killed many who were deserving and many who were not. By the end, is he still carrying himself as so? Absolutely not. For instance, even after barbarically killing Heimdall, his death was justified. He was a direct threat to his son, a formidable Aesir, and held the key to starting Ragnarok. You can summarize Kratos' internal monologue as follows. Is this person's death necessary, or is it just my untamed rage steering me? My point is, he was far more rational with his approach than before. Contrast that to past Kratos, who would have never shown mercy to Heimdall, Thor, and even Odin himself. Talking of divinity, Kratos is also immortal, again a stereotypical trait of being divine. Though where immortality is usually viewed as a gift to eternally serve others, Kratos hated his godhood altogether. However, like the Blades, he eventually made peace with his immortal curse. Remarkably, at the end of God of War 3, we can see a phoenix engraved where he died. A phoenix of course represents rebirth, not just literally in this context, but the birth of a new god altogether, as seen now. Finally, one of the most important questions remains. Has Kratos redeemed himself from the horrific acts he committed? Just like whether he was an anti-hero or hero was somewhat ambiguous in the Greek games, so too is the answer to this question. Aside from killing many who were not deserving, through the disorder he caused by killing key gods, such as Poseidon who regulated the sea, Kratos was responsible for likely millions of deaths. On the other hand, he saved the Norse lands from a tyrant who would have continued his oppressive rule in pursuit of knowledge. You could argue Kratos saved millions of lives in the long run. You could also argue not only was Kratos reborn like a phoenix, but so was the Greek realm, now free from a tyrannical ruler with the power of hope to start anew. While it doesn't excuse him for his past mistakes, it's the closest he'll come to redemption. Therefore, I believe Kratos will need to continue to serve others for as long as he lives, which seems foreshadowed by his new title, the Rebuilder. To conclude, Kratos has gone through a vast amount of character development. While many enjoyed the rageful god with his tunnel vision for revenge, the current Kratos offers far more dimensionality. The writers managed to transition these two versions organically, so it didn't seem like a sudden change. Rather, the player can feel the gradual development after the events of God of War 3. This was achieved primarily through Atreus and Faye, acting as a vessel, allowing him to finally escape the Veil of Destruction. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I plan to experiment with my content over the next few uploads to see which direction I'd like to take the channel in. Please feel free to leave any thoughts in the comments below where I'd love to discuss with you guys. As always, take care.